So, Game of Thrones ended a few years back, and to say the final season was underwhelming in the majority opinion of fans is perhaps the greatest understatement since Dumbledore asked Harry about putting his name into the Goblet of Fire calmly. But this was still the biggest TV event, well, ever. They can't have messed up that bad when it came to the characters, could they? Well, the answer is yes and no. Today we're bringing you the characters who we think got done dirty by the show. The list is ranked as we're currently fond of that, so our number one picks are who we think got shafted the most. We're also considering their time across the entire show, not just that amazing last season. So don't start complaining when you don't see characters like Jon and Varys, who kicked ass for basically 95% of the show and only tripped a little in the final seasons. And the final thing to consider is we're taking the characters who appeared in both mediums. So don't expose yourself as a filthy, disgusting, unworthy show-only watcher by shouting about the Night King in the comments. And obligatory algorithm-pleasing plea for you to like and subscribe. All praise the algorithm. And that's everything, let's get to it, Tom. In the Done Dirty category, we do have 3 honourable mentions. The first is of course Catelyn Stark, or as she became known, Lady Stoneheart. Now, we don't think it's fair to have her on the actual list just because Stoneheart was never in the show, so she was technically never done dirty. Catelyn's death was also done justice by the story, and as fan-servicey as it was, Arya stepping in and fulfilling the role as the Frey's Reckoning was plenty thematic and more than justified when the budget considerations of a TV show are to be considered. I also want to throw an honourable mention to Ilaria Sand and the Sand Snakes. They could definitely make the list, but the disconnect between the show and book versions is so damn big, it's hard to consider them done dirty because they may as well be totally different characters. Mace Tyrell also gets a cheeky shout because his transition from surface-level oafish buffoon who has some competence to actually incompetent idiot does rub on me and Tom a little, especially if you're a subscriber to the notion that Mace's idiocy in the books is potentially an act. Sorry, had to slip these in, Tom, or this will be the Red Wine Fleet all over again. And now, on to the actual picks. Our 5th pick on the Done Dirty pile is Tyrion Lannister. I mean, there's arguments he should really be on the Done Justice segment. Up until season 5, this guy was absolutely spot on due to Peter's performance and was supported by the excellent writing.
As I said, I was young and stupid.
And while he wasn't quite as dark and morally questionable as his book counterpart was up until this point, a fair TV-friendly balance was struck by D&D to bring us everyone's favourite little Lannister. But you can pinpoint the exact moment Tyrion's arc fell off the cliff. Right here. The issue here was that Jaime and Tyrion leaving on a fond farewell destroys one of the strongest elements in the book, where it's revealed that Tyrion's wife, Tysha, did truly love him, and wasn't a whore that Jaime paid to woo Tyrion. This was earth-shattering for Tyrion's character. His big brother Jaime, who he loved deeply, had betrayed him, and his father had helped destroy Tyrion's chance of love and acceptance. Tyrion, in anger, lies to Jaime, claiming that he actually did murder Joffrey, that Cersei was sleeping with Lancel and the Kettleblacks, and vowed to kill Jaime if they ever crossed paths again. This sets off a huge chain of events which leads Tyrion to kill Shae in cold blood, which is less grey in the books and more like a cold-blooded warm-up murder, before he pays good old dad a visit with the crossbow. Tyrion is so consumed with revenge that one of his goals is to, you know what, Cersei.
Should be in for a bit of a rape.
Straight up, he wants to, you know what, his sister. This is the level of darkness Tyrion embodies that the show truly strayed from in favor of keeping him cracking jokes.
And a girl's mouth around my cock.
Now, because Tyrion is more of a good guy in the show, and they didn't want to open any more plot threads, because we all know where that leads, I do have to admit I kind of understand the showrunner's intentions with omitting this in favor of giving Tyrion a new role. And that was stepping in to fulfill the role that Barristan, R.I.P. Grandpa Knight, provides in the books as Dany's chief advisor, instead of swanning off and doing his own thing with young Griff or running around with Penny like he is in the books. From a show pruning the roster standpoint, this was a great fit, but whether through mishandling the character's potential motivations for helping Dany, which you know probably could have been more impactful had they actually stuck with the book-accurate farewell with Jaime, or trying to do some clever deconstruction of his cunning, and we all know D&D thinks they can pull that Rian Johnson shit, Tyrion was just kind of useless and stopped acting like Tyrion, becoming Dany's punching bag with none of that signature cunning, combined with his halfway decent morality that made him so endearing. Now, we've placed him on the bottom of the done dirty pile because while we do think he was screwed over massively, there was a precedent set for Tyrion to have a little bit of a spiral, questioning himself and his loyalties, and you can very loosely argue that his mistakes and tactical blunders with Dany are the results of deep-seated doubt making his fall from grace not totally without justification, considering the trauma he'd been through. But come on, this is George R.R. Martin's favorite character. They could have done so much more with him.
A day will come when you think you're safe and happy, and your joy will turn to ashes in your mouth.
And our number 4 pick for those done dirty, Daenerys Targaryen, first of her name, breaker of chains, and mother of who actually gives a fuck after that final season. You might think we're going to cry about how Dany went mad at the end of the show and how it was totally out of character for her to do so. Well, you're wrong. Me and Tom are of the opinion that it was always Dany's arc to transition from savior to villain. It's been mildly hinted at all the way back to season 2. Say what you want about her positive traits, the kid could be an entitled brat, and her leadership strength and qualities, if we're being honest, come on guys, actually stemmed from magic, owning dragons, and having wise counselors. She wasn't actually all that as a ruler in our humble opinion. Dany was never written to be the hero's journey character, or as close as you can get in George R.R. Martin's complex world. That honor has, and likely always will be, with Jon. Dany is actually a masterpiece of writing. She's a metaphorical mirror held up to the self-righteous, and a great critique of any douchebag who ever said, "If I had the power, I would do the right thing," and hang on, this is its own video, Tom. Let me stop rambling and make a note of it. Anyway, the reason Dany makes the done dirty pile is not because of the turn, but due to how jarring and tactless the turn from hero of the realm to genocidal maniac was due to the failure to establish it properly in earlier seasons. The books do a very good job of striking a balance between presenting Dany as a naive but benevolent savior type, but also planting the seeds and showing the cracks where the tyrant within her could quite easily take over, all with masterful nuance. The show didn't ignore this entirely, come on guys, let's be fair, but only the delusional would think they didn't lean much too hard on the savior elements and not hard enough on the tyrannical entitlement. For the show, it was far too sharp and sudden, and while the hints were there, they were not quite bold enough to justify such a rapid metamorphosis. Oh, they screwed up a narrative plot point that could have been as iconic as "No, I'm your father." Dany got done dirty in the same way the Night King did after catching a nasty case of, "I need a whole season devoted to my arc and the subsequent knock-on effects it has for the story." And D&D basically came along and said, "Yes, Kathleen, we'll be right there. Oh, hey Dany, here's the final couple of episodes, take 2, and call us in the morning." And the rest is history. At number 3 in the Dum Tom pile, we have Euron Greyjoy. I mean, there's a similar argument that like Alaria and the Sand Snakes, this fucker shouldn't even be on the list, since he is for all intents and purposes a different character from his book counterpart. But since he's more impactful in both mediums, unlike Alaria and the Snakes, who while represented well in the books were, along with Dawn as a whole, kind of just shunted off to the side in the show, we think his inclusion is justified.
Does she like it gentle or rough? A finger in the bum. Shh. Not now. We'll talk later.
To claim the show did Euron Greyjoy dirty would be doing the book version a huge disservice, and it's only because of the utter fuckery and small semblance of hope that was dashed we received with the 2 characters above him that he didn't claim the top spot. At least we knew this translation from page to screen was a goddamn mess from the opening of his mouth. Book Euron is a dark, cruel, totally psychotic madman who thinks he can bend dragons to his will, spits on all the gods of A Song of Ice and Fire, and might possibly be Cthulhu made flesh. So pretty interesting, even though he's about as fucked up as it gets and makes Ramsay's activities look like baby's first sociopath.
I don't mock the drowned god. I am the drowned god. From Old Town to Karth, when men see my sails, they pray.
Show Euron is an arrogant, egotistical toddler who thinks dick jokes and a blank stare and a cheesy, shit-eating grin constitutes a personality. Granted, Show Euron did have a couple of badass moments, but the damage was already done, and what should have been moments of tense, fear-inducing anxiety, as would have been the case with Book Euron, did nothing but elicit a cringe, a groan, and a typical statement of, "Oh, not this fucking guy," from most people I watched the show with. That is not what you want from your fear-inducing Lovecraftian-influenced character. No disrespect to Pilu, the actor who betrayed him whatsoever.
Who? Is that?
He likely wasn't given much to work with from the writers, and in all honesty was likely handed a piece of paper with the word creepy weirdo on it for his character motivation.
It's a big fuck you boat built by a big fuck you guy.
And in that regard, you can't say he didn't nail it. But man, what a letdown!
I'm not gonna lie, I don't like you very much on Game of Thrones.
Oh, thank you. And I just gave you a compliment.
I know.
At number 2 for who got crapped on, we've got Jaime Lannister. But Liam, that said, if it was only the last season where the character was shit on, it didn't count. Trust me guys, this is a special fucking exception. Jaime had his character utterly murdered, his corpse stomped on, spat on, pissed and shit on, and then paraded around in some macabre repeat of Robwind in those last few episodes of Thrones, and like pulling the thread on a sweater, it basically unraveled his entire journey going all the way back to season 1. Granted, his show portrayal didn't quite pull the turn that his book counterpart did by swearing off Cersei not long after his handless return, but his good guy redemption arc was still pretty much intact, and those cruel bastards even teased us with a happy ending for him and his favorite badass babe Brienne alongside his little brother, which while not faithful to the spirit of the books, I'll be honest, would have been a nice conclusion to his arc. The question that plagues me constantly is, why? There was nothing poetic or satisfying about him running back to Cersei apart from to murder her himself, to rid the world of her evil and complete his redemption arc by relieving himself of the one corrupting element left influencing him.
He's got almost an addiction to Cersei that he just can't break. So even though he's given a kind of a chance at happiness and some kind of different life for himself, he can't take it. He makes the choice to go back to Cersei.
I don't know, maybe he was trying to bear hug her to death and the rocks got there first? Oh man, I wish I could believe that, but then this preceded it.
I would have murdered every man, woman, and child in Riverrun for Cersei. She's hateful. And so am I.
How many lives have you saved?
500,000. The population of King's Landing.
This is a man who never really cared for the people, is it, D&D? I guess it was some other golden-haired knight who stabbed the Mad King in the back, forsaking his oaths and forever tarnishing his reputation and his name with the moniker Kingslayer in order to save a bunch of nameless peasants, was it? Now, we're not saying you can't have Jaime redeem himself but then eventually fall back into corruption. But for fuck's sake, you've got to lay the groundwork for that kind of thing, especially when you've been pushing him so damn hard in the opposite direction for basically the entire run of the show with only a few detours on his moral compass. And we've made it to our number 1 done dirty pick, and I'm dragging it out, of course it's Stannis fucking Baratheon. As I choke down my nerd rage, I will try to elaborate. Of every single character in the Game of Thrones TV series, Stannis was hands down given the least fair of shakes. And to those not in the know, there were many reasons for this. The two predominant ones were that D&D had a personal dislike of Stannis and even admitted they didn't really understand the character.
I would make a better ruler than you, which is unquestionably true. And Stannis would be a terrible king, most likely.
And even the actor Stephen Delaney, despite being a solid casting on the looks front and having the acting chops to give one heck of a performance with what he was given, even admitted he didn't ever understand what the character was about. What a perfect casting, eh? In fact, he was so perfect for the role that the actor Liam Cunningham had to explain to him what was happening in most of his scenes. Now, it's perfectly normal for actors not to care about a particular character they're playing, just learn their lines and follow the instructions of the director. No disrespect to Stefan in the slightest, he is a pro. When you hear fans talk about Stannis, you often find two camps of thought. Those who refer to him as the menace, and those who think of him as the broody douchebag who burnt his daughter. The difference between these two camps is very often a difference of medium. Those who have just watched the show, and those who have watched the show but also read the books. Not saying there aren't book readers who hate Stannis and they will be promptly sacrificed to the Lord of Light, but generally, even in the eyes of his detractors, his book iteration is looked upon more favorably and with good reason. The show leans hard on Stannis being one of the story's villains. It's perhaps best reflected and demonstrated in the music. Stannis/Melisandre's theme is not the beautiful melancholy mixed with heroism of the Stark's theme, or the triumphant rising from the ashes with a hint of darkness that scores Dany. It's dark, menacing, and despite only being 4 sparse notes, extremely overbearing and oppressive. And while it's an absolutely brilliant piece of music, no disrespect to Dawadi whatsoever, it's just kind of wrong for book Stannis and kind of shows us how the showrunners wanted to paint this complex character. Stannis is no hero, not by a long shot. Many of the crappy, morally questionable things he does in the show, minus the burning of his daughter, he also does in the books. However, Stannis is also far from a villain. He is the true middle ground. Yes, this is a man who will have people burned to appease a priestess of a god he's not even sure he believes in. However, I should note he doesn't do it nearly as willy-nilly in the books. And yes, he leashed his unwilling bastard nephew and planned to burn him to perform even more dark magic to help him gain the throne. But this is also a man willing to do whatever it took to save his daughter's life, and even plans to place her on the throne if he dies. A man who will tell Mel to shove it when he disagrees with her ideas. A man able to look past the shackles of classism and raise even a lowly smuggler to the position of Hand of the King, after said smuggler paid his dues to Lady Justice, of course. Judging people by their actions instead of title. A man who will sit in the dirt and eat the same shitty rations as his troops on principle. A man who will sacrifice his political movement in favor of riding to save the failing Night's Watch at the Wall, and even when stuck in the snow and freezing to death, refuses to burn any of his loyal men and plans to beat the flaying bastards with good old strategic thinking. This is not a man who would burn his daughter at the stake for a bit of sun and melted snow. Now, we're not saying Shireen is safe from the Lord of Light's Bernie embrace in the books, but it very likely won't be brought about by Stannis himself. This is a man who sees the world in black and white, with a sense of justice and fairness, but willing to swallow the bitter pill of hard choices in order to be an effective king. A man who doesn't really want the throne for power and power's sake, but because he understands it's the only way he can right the perceived wrongs of the previous and current rulers and bring true justice to the realm. Plus, it's his by right, and there's a crazed, psychotic incest baby sitting on it, and that just won't do. Duty above all else is at the very core of the Manus. The show threw out this complex personality and motive in favor of a more simplistic villain simping for the Red Lady and her foreign religion, and willing to do whatever it takes with no other motivation than seemingly sitting the throne because he wants what's his by right, and as the middle child, it's his turn for some attention. Which just misses the point of the character entirely. And the ending the showrunners went with for him. Tom, look at what they did to my boy. Could have at least had him having some epic last stand against the walkers or something. Poetically and underscoring that his duty to the realm is what killed him. You know, satisfying and ironic storytelling. And that's our take. Do you agree with us, or have we committed some sort of treason with our list? Who do you think was done dirty, and who do you think got their fair due when jumping from book to screen? Let us know in the comments. What did we get right, what did we miss, and what did we get wrong?